There are a lot of Pokemon rivals, 27 to be exact, in just the main series alone. And with so many rivals, it can be hard to remember the important details about every one. Which Pokemon do they use? How do they contribute to the story? Were they actually mean or just a child? Today, we aim to fix this issue as we explain all 27 rivals in Pokemon. We're going in the order that the rivals are introduced, so we're starting with Gary or Blue. Blue is, without a doubt, the most iconic rival in all of Pokemon. Not only did he play a huge role in the Pokemon anime, he's also the rival that has made the most appearances in Pokemon games as well. But I think what makes Blue truly memorable is just his attitude. The guy is kind of a jerk, but not in a way that makes him a complete asshole, just in a way that shows you that he's competitive and a bit of an asshole. It's a perfect mix that makes the player want to beat him while also not making him too hateable. Blue is the grandson of Professor Oak and lives in Pallet Town alongside the player. Like most rivals, he goes through his own Pokemon journey in tandem with us, growing and changing as he travels across the region. After picking up our first Pokemon together, he seems to always be just one step ahead of us. He visits Bill before us, he gets cut right before us, and he gets a number of gym badges before we do too. And it all just fuels our desire to beat him, especially with the attitude he gives us at every encounter. Interestingly though, he does seem to come to respect us over the course of the game. At the beginning of the game, he thinks we just get lucky when we beat him, but by the time we face off against him in the Pokemon League, he admits that we're pretty strong. And after we defeat him, he finally admits that we are stronger than he is. It's subtle, but it is character growth. I think at some point, he sort of has the realization that being a jerk like he was impacting the relationships he could maintain. He seems a bit upset that his grandfather seems to prefer the player over him in the Fire Red and Leaf Green post-game, as he points out that he was faster and better at collecting Pokemon than we were, yet Oak called on us first. I think this caused Blue to do some self-reflection and become more thoughtful, because the next time we see him in Heart Gold Soul Silver, he has some serious introspective contemplation. After seeing the destruction of Cinnabar Island due to a volcanic eruption, he states, "A volcanic eruption, and just like that, a whole town disappears. We can go on winning and losing in Pokemon, but if nature so much as twitches, we can be overwhelmed in a second. That's just the way it is." This is a huge change in maturity from the little snot-nosed brat we started our adventure with in Kanto. I know he's not our rival in these games, but I thought this dialogue was worth pointing out. Also, you can take a picture with him here after you defeat Red. Blue appears once again in the Alola games, where he plays a super small role as one of the bosses in the battle tree. His next and final major appearance, at least at the time of recording, is in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, where he acts more as a mentor than as a rival. But we do fight him a couple of times in these games. In general, Blue uses pretty solid, well-balanced teams in the fights we have against him. Obviously, the earlier ones are far less competent than the later ones, but that's just kind of how Pokemon games go. By the end of the game, his team is made up of a Pidgeot, an Alakazam, and a Rhydon, as well as a Gyarados, Arcanine, and Exeggutor, with one of these three being replaced by the starter of the same type, giving his team a bit of variation. If it was up to Blue though, I think he would use Charmander as his starter, as it is the Pokemon he uses the most in battles where he does not act as a rival. Another interesting tidbit is that in the Let's Go games, Blue's rematch team seems to be inspired by the cup battle with Professor Oak from the original Kanto games, as they share a number of Pokemon. Blue also makes an appearance at the Pokemon World Tournament in the Championship Tournament. Next is Silver, who, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting rivals we have. Silver is introduced to us at a very low point in his life. Abandoned by his parents, he is filled with a lot of resentment and a strong hatred for the weak, and perceived weakness in general. This hatred likely stems from his frustration with his father Giovanni, who left him to go live in a cave after the collapse of Team Rocket. During an event-exclusive cutscene, we see Silver accuse Giovanni of being a coward for running away, before exclaiming that he will become a stronger man than Giovanni by himself. Silver is very obviously hurt by being abandoned by Giovanni, which makes sense, but I think it goes even deeper than that. It's clear from this scene that Giovanni tried to portray himself as a strong individual to Silver, but the collapse of Team Rocket completely upended this image, especially since it happened at the hands of a child. This clearly shattered any admiration or respect Silver had for Giovanni, meaning he was not only abandoned by his father, but betrayed by by him as well. Although it does seem like they already had a bit of a rocky relationship to begin with, so I suspect the cracks in Giovanni's facade started to form before even this cutscene. Regardless, it does explain why Silver is so angry and outright mean when we first run into him. But I don't know if he needed to go as far as stealing a Pokemon from Professor Elm. Like, I know he wanted to do things by himself, but is that worth it if it means committing theft and becoming a criminal like Giovanni? It doesn't make much sense, but not much of what Silver says at the beginning of the game really does. He's really cruel and often talks about how useless weak Pokemon are, going as far as insulting the Elder of Sprout Tower and saying that the Ampharos in the Olivine Lighthouse would be better off dying than getting care from Jasmine, which is just so insane. And we're really still out here convinced that Blue is the meanest rival. It's not until Silver loses to Lance in the Team Rocket base that he starts reconsidering how he's raising his Pokemon. Lance basically tells him that the reason he's weak is because he doesn't care about or love his Pokemon enough. And after we defeat him in battle a couple more times, Lance's words eventually start to sink in, and Silver actually makes a pretty significant turnaround. By the time that we beat him in Victory Road, he fully admits that he's starting to understand what Lance meant and even goes to train in the Dragon Den. If we talk to him in the Dragon's Den after a tag team battle, he'll mention how he's still not giving up on beating us and that he needs to train his own Pokemon more as well as his own heart, which to me is the biggest indicator of his desire to change. When we meet him for the final time at the Indigo Plateau, he takes on a much different tone, and while he still seems to be frustrated to have lost, he now understands that it's because he didn't believe in his own Pokemon enough rather than his Pokemon being too weak. Honestly, I really wish we could get more of Silver. I would love to see some more of the Johto story from his perspective and how he turns out in a couple of years. As for the team that he uses when he battles, it's not all that special. Okay, it's not bad for Johto, but compared to some of the other rivals like Blue or Berry or Nemona, it does leave a lot to be desired. In the last mandatory battle against him, his team is a Sneasler, a Golbat, a Magneton, a Kadabra, a Haunter, and his starter. And while this isn't awful, you might notice that 5 of his 6 Pokemon are not fully evolved. Now, I can understand Golbat not being fully evolved because it is a Friendship Evo, and that is obviously something he's still working on. Magneton also makes sense since it can only be evolved at Mount Coronet, which is in an entirely different region. But the other 3, there's no excuse there. He does fully evolve both Alakazam and Gengar later on, and in the final battle we can have against him, he does finally get the Crobat evolution as well, which is a sign to me that he really is trying to treat his Pokemon better. Interestingly, in the 1997 Space World demo, Silver's name in the Silver demo was Satoshi, which is Ash's name in Japanese. I don't think they meant anything by this, it's just kinda cool and I wanted to point it out. Following Silver is May or Brendan depending on the gender that you choose for your character. These two are some of the most beloved Pokemon rivals. For some reason. Look, I don't think these two are bad or anything, they're just some of the most absent rivals in the entire series. Like, we only face them 4 times across the entire game. They're barely involved in the story and they just kind of show up at random points. In fact, they're so absent from the story that they're the only rival ever whose starter Pokemon never fully evolves, at least in the original Gen 3 games. That's right, even in the last battle you have against them in Lily Cove, their starter is still a middle evolution, and the rest of their team is not all that remarkable if we're being honest. This is sort of resolved in the Hoenn remakes as they add 2 more battles with the rival. One is a multi-battle where we fight alongside them in Meteor Falls, and the other is an additional 5th battle where they have a much more realized team, including a Mega Evolution. But that doesn't really change the fact that they are really absent from the game. I think the reason they are so absent just boils down to what they really are. Because as much as they are our rival, they're not trying to complete the Pokemon League or do the same kind of stuff our character is. They're a research assistant for Professor Birch first and foremost. In fact, being a Pokemon professor seems to be their main motivation in life, with Brendan's Trainer Eye introduction stating that he wants to be an even better Pokemon professor than his father, and May's saying that she and her Pokemon help with her father's research. So it's not that they're necessarily bad trainers, they're just focused elsewhere. I think a big part of the memorability memorability and likability of these two comes down to their designs more than anything else. Brendan has that weird hat that kind of looks like hair, and May might just have one of the most iconic character designs in all of Pokemon. She's also a very well-regarded companion of Ash in the anime, so that might be a factor too. Plus, I think the fact that they're not annoying or overbearing and just kind of pop in occasionally makes them hard to hate. You know? In a world of Hops and Urbaines, a May is sometimes preferable. But May and Brendan aren't the only rivals in the Hoenn region. There's also Wally, who is an even less involved rival. We help him catch a routes, then beat his ass outside Watson's gym, and then we don't see him again until Victory Road. When we do see him again, he seems pretty changed as a person, and he's a lot more self-assured and eager to battle. His team is also pretty solid no matter what game you fight him in. In the original Gen 3 games, he has an Altaria, a Delcatty, a Roselia, a Magneton, and a Gardevoir, which all things considered isn't all that bad. It certainly isn't fantastic, like what is Roselia doing there, but besides that, it's fine. In the Oras games, his Gardevoir gets exchanged for a Gallade, which can Mega Evolve, and a lot of the movesets he fights with have been improved as well, except Roselia's, which got worse because it uses a physical move when it's a special attacker. His team continues to improve as you rematch him though, and becomes pretty threatening overall by the end of it. Also, in the process of researching this video, I learned that his strategy, according to the Match Call or Trainer Eyes feature in Gen 3, was "we let it all hang out," which is just such a crazy sentence. Next, we have Barry. But before we can talk about Barry, I must beg you to subscribe to this channel. Please. Just do it. You know you want to, or you would have skipped over this part of the video. You know, I feel like I see a lot of people disliking Barry, but personally, I kind of like him a lot. Like, sure, he's a bit giddy and has golden retriever energy, but I've always been fond of the chaos that he brings. Plus, it's not like he's a bad person. He's caring and driven, with that same giddy energy making it nearly impossible to discourage him no matter how many times we defeat him. And he does have a soft side too, as we see him quickly get attached to his starter Pokemon, even though it isn't technically his at the moment. Unlike the rivals of Hoenn, Barry is pretty heavily involved in the story of Sinnoh, especially in the latter half, as he assists us in attempting to stop Team Galactic from capturing the Lake Trio, even if he ultimately fails to protect Yuxi. But this is exactly where his attitude comes in handy, because he bounces back from this defeat rather quickly and joins us atop Mount Coronet to fight Team Galactic. Even after this battle, we see him a couple more times throughout the story, as he acts as our final challenge before the Elite Four and then battles alongside us against Volkner and Flint. It's also worth mentioning that he's the son of Palmer, one of the Frontier Brains in Gen 4, so perhaps that explains where he gets his attitude and battling prowess from. As for the Pokemon he uses, Barry puts together a pretty competent team, all things considered. He has a Staraptor with Intimidate, a Heracross, and a Snorlax, as well as a Roserade, a Floatzel, and a Rapidash, with one of them getting swapped out for the starter of the same type. It's not a crazy team, but considering the rivals that come before and after him, it looks pretty strong by comparison, and it only gets stronger during rematches, and gets even stronger in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, as a number of his Pokemon have held items like the Expert Belt, Focus Sash, and Black Sludge. One interesting thing that makes Barry unique though, is that he's the only rival to ever get a team changed via patch, and the patch didn't make it easier either. In version 1.1.0 of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, his Staraptor was given either Rain Dance or Sunny Day depending on if you chose Chimchar or Piplup respectively. This move will simultaneously debuff your starter and buff his. Prior to this patch, Staraptor just had Endeavor. This change was likely made to make these rematch battles more congruent with Barry's 5th and 6th battles, as Staraptor has Sunny Day or Rain Dance in those, but it's still a bit wild to me that they changed a battle post-release. For a while, Barry actually held the record for the highest level Pokemon owned by a rival, as his starter Pokemon could reach level 85. This record stood for over a decade, but was broken by a couple of rivals that we'll be talking about a bit later. For now, we have to move on to the Unova region, where we have a number of rivals to talk about, and while we could talk about Cheren or Bianca first, I want to start with the true rival of Black and White, N. Whether or not N is technically a rival in Black and White is up for debate, but when we look at him, I feel like it's pretty obvious that he is. You fight him multiple times throughout the story, he's important to the plot, and his team changes in every battle. He just has all the hallmarks of a rival, and in my opinion, is a more compelling and interesting rival than either Cheren or Bianca. And he's certainly more interesting than Hugh, but more on that later. N's most defining attribute is his ability to understand Pokemon. Not understand them like we understand pets, nor communicate with them in some abstract manner. He can literally talk with them and understand their thoughts directly. This unique ability has given N an equally unique perspective on Pokemon, which is that they shouldn't be kept in Pokeballs or trained by people in general. Such behavior taints the Pokemon and makes it imperfect. He dreams of a future where Pokemon can be free of their trainers, and all of his actions throughout the games aim to accomplish this. At least, that's how things seem at the beginning of the game. But the more N interacts with us and our Pokemon, the more he starts to question his motivation, because he can clearly see and hear just how much our Pokemon enjoy traveling with us. By the time we encounter him in Mistralton City, he seems to understand that not all trainers are bad, but despite the existence of good trainers, there are still way too many people who treat Pokemon badly, and therefore he must follow through on his quest even though it does break his heart to separate Pokemon from trainers that love them. And later admits that his belief was founded on his personal experiences, but after traveling around Unova, he saw more and more people and Pokemon that truly cared for one another, and that our final confrontation was him trying and attempting to vilify his beliefs one last time, only to see that they were wrong. What's interesting about this arc of N's is that it basically implies that Ghetsis hates his Pokemon, as N was primarily in the care and control of Ghetsis up to this point in his life. This is corroborated by the team that Ghetsis uses in Black and White 2, where his Hydreigon has Frustration, a move that gets stronger the lower its happiness. So N's entire worldview was manipulated by a selfish man who only wanted to improve his own standing and power over others. And once N escaped his manipulation and started experiencing the world for himself, he saw just how twisted Ghetsis' version of the world really was. It's kind of like how right-wing media will paint these big American cities as crime-filled hellholes, but when you go there, they're actually pretty nice and enjoyable overall, except LA. As for the Pokemon N uses, it actually changes a lot. See, unlike most rivals, N catches an entirely new team of Pokemon for each battle. This is largely because of his belief that Pokemon shouldn't be kept in Pokeballs, and it leads to him using a wide variety of Pokemon. In fact, over the course of his battles, he uses all 17 types that existed at the time, which is pretty cool. I don't want to break down every team he uses because this video is going to be long enough as is, so let's just focus on his final team, where he uses a Reshiram or Zekrom depending on the game, a Kiracosta, a Vanillix, an Archeops, a Zoroark, and a Klinklang. But it's time to move on to Cheren and Bianca, who are less interesting rivals, but they're not bad by any means. They basically represent the two kinds of rivals we've seen up to this point, those that are focused on battling and those that are focused on research. Cheren is the former. From the very beginning of the game, he is determined to become a strong trainer. He starts out really impatient and honestly kind of rude, but he takes a turn for the better after running into Alder, who basically asks what it means to be strong and why Cheren wants to be strong. This causes Cheren to become a lot more introspective, eventually realizing that there's a difference between his personal strength and the strength of his Pokemon. In Icarus City, he even admits that he's not sure if he as an individual has gotten any stronger. Strength in Pokemon is an ever-present topic, but I feel like Cheren is the first time we really consider what it means to be strong as a person. Sure, there are people in other regions who are strong people and strong trainers, like Cynthia, Oak, or Watson, but Cheren is the first time we really get to see the formation of a character like this in real time. By the end of the game, he understands that everyone has their own kind of strength, and that having strength in general is important to making dreams a reality. As for his Pokemon, he's got an Unfezant, a Liepard, his starter, and an Elemental Monkey, which has the type that covers his starter's weakness. In the post-game, this team is expanded to also include a Gigalith and a Haxorus, which does make it a good bit more formidable. Interestingly, all of Cheren's Pokemon have held items, making him one of the few regular trainers to fully kit out his Pokemon. Then there's Bianca. Being the research-focused rival, Bianca doesn't quite match up to Cheren's battling prowess, but I think think she more than makes up for this by being a really interesting character. See, Bianca has a lot more built-in adversity than either the player or Cheren. She's a worse battler and has a father that doesn't want her to travel around the region. She starts off the adventure with the same ambitions as us and Cheren, stating that she wants to become strong so she can stop losing, but that never really happens. In fact, at one point, one of her Pokemon gets stolen by Team Plasma and we have to rescue it for her. This shakes her to her core and really makes her consider what she wants to do with Pokemon. By the time we get to Castelia, she confesses that she doesn't think she'll ever be as strong as the player, and after her father tries to drag her back home, she declares that she will eventually go home, but first she wants to figure out what she wants to do. As I'm sure you can already tell, she settles on being a Pokemon researcher, and after we finish up the game, she ends up working for Professor Juniper. It's a cute little journey of self-discovery that contrasts nicely with Cheren's and N's more serious stories. Cheren and Bianca are supposed to represent the two main themes of the Black and White games, truth and ideals, with Bianca representing truth, specifically the truth that not everyone can be good at everything they want to, and Cheren representing ideals, specifically the ideal that exists within strength. As for the Pokemon Bianca uses, she's got a Stoutland, a Musharna, the starter that is weak to ours, and the Elemental Monkey that is strong against it. In the post-game, she adds a Chandelure and a Mienshao to the team. Unlike Cheren, she does not use any held items on any of her Pokemon, and we also fight her less throughout the story, fighting her 5 times compared to Cheren's 7. I think these differences were done deliberately because they show that she is less of a battler than he is, but that might be obvious. And last but not least, we have Hugh. Actually, scratch that. He is last, and he is also least of the Unova rivals. Look, I'm not trying to hate on Hugh, but compared to the rivals in Black and White 1, he's just kind of generic. He spends the entire game chasing Team Plasma around the region trying to find his sister's purloin, and he doesn't really have much personality beyond that. Even once he does find the cat and it's revealed to have been trained and evolved by the Shadow Triad, essentially making it a different Pokemon, he doesn't really change or have any major character revelations after the fact. He's just a very meh rival and doesn't have personality traits that make him as interesting as the original 3. As for the Pokemon he uses, he's got an Unfezant, a Bouffalant, a starter, and an Elemental Monkey. It's very similar to Cheren's team, but with the Liepard switched out for Bouffalant. In the post-game though, his team does get a bit more differentiated, as he adds a Flygon and an Electros into the mix, and he does give all of his Pokemon items in the post-game as well, so that counts for something. From here, I think Pokemon rivals kind of start to decline. They're not all awful, but a lot of them start to feel generic and similar to each other. A region that's really guilty of this is the Kalos region, where 3 of the 4 rivals basically aren't real, and even the one that isn't all that interesting, and that's Serena, or Serena. I don't know which one it is, so I'm just gonna say Serena because I at least know that's a real name. Serena is a pretty straightforward character. She's the child of a couple prominent trainers, and she basically acts as a glorified tutorial throughout the story. She teaches us how to catch Pokemon, then explains that certain Pokemon have conditions for evolving beyond leveling up, then explains HMs to us, and even introduces us to Mega Evolution. Her text lacks personality in any real sense, and more often than not, she just refers to us as neighbor rather than our player's name. She does get worn down losing to us over and over and over again, eventually determining that she's changing her motivation for battling, and instead of just winning, she wants to understand her opponent and their Pokemon, which is kind of interesting, but it's really the only interesting thing about her because the rest of her is so, well, bland. As for her team, she uses a Meowstic, an Altaria, an Absol, and the starter that our starter is weak against, as well as a Vaporeon, Flareon, or Jolteon that depends on which starter we choose. In the post-game, she adds a Clefable to her team, and her Absol gets the Absolite, making it her Mega Evolution. Next is Shauna, who is basically going on a Pokemon adventure to make memories, but isn't concerned with much else in terms of training. She pops in every once in a while, but rarely adds anything of substance, instead just reaffirming what the other rivals say, but with a music note. We only battle her 2 times throughout the entire game. The first time she just has the starter that is weak to ours, and the second time she adds a Dalcatty and a Goodra to the mix, which she somehow got at level 49 despite it evolving at level 50. Next is Tierno, who somehow adds even less to the story than Shauna. Tierno seems to be fairly disinterested in Pokemon battling in general. Instead, he loves dancing. It's pretty much his only personality trait, story, but at least he sticks to it, as he brings it up again and again. He also plays a role in explaining some elements of the game to us, such as how Pokemon centers work and the basics of breeding. He's an inoffensive presence in the group, but like the rest of the rivals, he doesn't really add much to the story. He uses a Fire Water Grass core of Talonflame, Roserade, and Crawdon, with none of his Pokemon having complete movesets. In fact, his Roserade only has one move, and that's Petal Dance, which I guess makes sense for him. In fact, all of his Pokemon have at least one dancing move, with both Talonflame and Crawdon learning Swords Dance. But I can't help but feel that there's missing potential on this team. There are a lot of good dancing moves, and he's just ignoring them. There's no Dragon Dance, or Quiver Dance, or Fiery Dance, or hell, not even Rain Dance. If he had used Volcarona instead of Talonflame, he could have actually had a Pokemon with 2 dancing moves. But he didn't, and his team is worse for it. The only other noteworthy thing to say about Tierno is that he's actually related to another rival that we'll be talking about later in the video. And finally for Kalos, we have Trevor, who is the least involved of the rivals. Trevor basically fills the trope of the quiet, brainy kid, and as such, he doesn't add too much in the way of dialogue. Like the other rivals, he aids in explaining the game mechanics to us, such as PP and Horde battles. He's mostly concerned with filling out the Pokedex, and will occasionally ask how many Pokemon we've seen at different points throughout the story. The team he uses is made up of a Raichu, an Aerodactyl, and a Florges. And unlike the other rivals, all of his Pokemon actually have complete movesets, which is a low bar to clear, but he does clear it. I wish there was more to say about these 4, because I talked about them so much less than any of the rivals that preceded them, but there's just not. They're all bland and barely even count as being one-dimensional. So let's move on to Hugh. Hugh is a simple rival. He likes battling and he likes food. He lives right down the road from the player on Melemele Island, and as such is one of the first people we meet in the Alola region. Coincidentally, he also just got a starter Pokemon and is about to start his island challenge, so he will be accompanying us throughout the game. As a person, he's pretty upbeat and seems to be quite proud of his Alolan heritage, or at the very least seems to really enjoy the culture that he was born into. Unfortunately, he is also a pretty static character, meaning he doesn't undergo much in the way of character development or growth. This makes him hard to talk about or analyze because there's just not much going on, but at least he's more alive than the robots we had last generation. Hugh is also a rival in the Ultra games, but his role and personality don't change all that much, although he is our championship contender in this game, which goes to show that he has improved as a trainer, if only a bit. As for the Pokemon he uses, in the original Sun and Moon, he uses a Raichu, a Komala, the starter that is weak to ours, and a Flareon, Vaporeon, or Leafeon, which will have a type advantage over our starter. In the Ultra games, his team is a lot more interesting. As the champion, he keeps the Raichu, the starter, and the Evolution, but he also adds a Tauros, a Noivern, and a Crabominable. In both battles, his starter Pokemon holds his Z Crystal, which is the same type as their primary type. But Hugh isn't the only rival we have in Alola. There's also Gladion, who is a good bit more interesting. Gladion starts out as a pretty closed off and cold character. He's not exactly friendly, but he is still caring. He just has a rough exterior, as some would say. This is likely due to him being the child of Lusamine, who, as we all know, kind of went crazy and became abusive. So Gladion's distrust in us makes a lot of sense, all things considered. Originally, Gladion was introduced as a member of Team Skull, but they don't really consider him a member and he doesn't seem all that interested in their mischief. It's not until we go to the Aether Paradise that we get a closer look at Gladion and start to better understand him. In Secret Lab B, where Type Null was created, he sympathizes with the Pokemon, because for a lot of his life, he has been forced to act and behave a certain way. After we defeat Faba, he starts to open up to us and even says that he's glad we're there. From here, he becomes friendlier and less guarded, but never fully loses his edge. After the main bulk of the story is concluded, we can go into his motel room on Akala Island and find a letter where he apologizes to Lusamine for stealing Type Null, but he also says that he does not regret doing it or taking the other actions that he took. It appears that for most of the backstory of Sun and Moon, Gladion was trying to manage Lusamine's insanity while also trying to shield Lily from it as much as he could, but eventually he came to a breaking point point and decided to try a different route. So I definitely think he is a good person, just with a bit of a troubled past. In the Ultra games though, he does become a fair bit less interesting, just because the family situation behind the scenes gets toned down a lot. He is still kind of gruff, but it just seems like he's grumpy for no reason in these games. As for the Pokemon he uses, he has a Crobat, a Weavile, a Lucario, and a Silvally, which will be the type that is strong against your starter. His Lucario also holds the Stellium Z Crystal. In the Ultra games, he keeps the Crobat, Silvally, and Lucario, but the Weavile is exchanged for a Zoroark, which is now holding his Z Crystal. Next we have Trace from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Trace is basically just blue, but worse in every way. I'm not even joking. He's a less interesting rival, the teams he builds are worse, and his role in the story is a bit less significant too. Like, he's so not notable that he comes up below the ability trace when you look up Trace Pokemon. But he is a rival, so I had to at least mention him. As for his Pokemon, he has a Pidgeot with Pidgeotite, a Vileplume, a Marowak, a Rapidash, a Slowbro, and a Jolteon or Raichu depending on the game. And despite being the champion, all of his Pokemon only have 3 moves. So that's something. Now we have How To. I mean, Hop. Hop is a rival. Certainly one of the rivals of all time. Look, I know people love to rag on Hop, but I think there is a pretty decent reason for it. He's just the most bland and boring of the upbeat rivals. To be honest, I don't think he would have such a bad reputation if he hadn't been introduced right after How, who's basically the same, just a little bit better because he was introduced first, so the trope wasn't as tired. Hop starts his Pokemon journey at the same time that we do, and he hopes to be the next champion of Galar, unseating his older brother Leon. He's basically attached at the hip with the player for the entirety of our journey across Galar, to the point that he even helps us defeat Eternatus at the climax of the game. His team is made up of a Dubwool, a Corviknight, a Pincurchin, a Snorlax, and the starter that is weak to ours. Later on in the final battle we can have against them, he will add a Zamazenta or Zacian to his team as well, holding their respective items. Next we have Bede, and if I'm being honest, I have no idea what this guy does. Like, I remember him being there, and I've reread the plot of the game. He just doesn't add anything to the story of Sword and Shield. He's originally sponsored by Rose, but after damaging a landmark, he loses that. Then he becomes the apprentice of Opal, but comes close to quitting that because he doesn't want to be a gym leader for some reason. Then he interrupts the final tournament and demands a battle with us, which he gets for some reason, and that's basically all he does in the plot. I think he's supposed to be one of those confused and motivationally lost characters, kind of like Silver, as he is an orphan and seems to have a lot of rage and arrogance within him, but he just falls flat and doesn't really feel compelling or interesting at all. He is primarily a fairy type trainer, but uses a lot of psychic types as well. Over half his team is psychic fairy, as he has a Gardevoir, a Galarian Rapidash, and his ace is a Hatterene. In addition to these 3, he also has a Mawile and a Sylveon. And the final rival we have in the base game of Sword and Shield is Marnie. Marnie is a bit more interesting than Bede because she actually has some degree of motivation. She wants to become the champion because she thinks it'll make her hometown, Spikemouth, more desirable, as the town is currently kind of run down. Aside from that though, she is pretty bland, but I think it's intentional. She's supposed to be a more laid back or maybe even shy person, so it makes sense that she wouldn't show her passion in the same way that someone like Hop or Bede would. As for the Pokemon that she uses, it's a lot of dark types, including Liepard, Scrafty, Morpeko, and Grimmsnarl. The only Pokemon on her team that isn't a dark type is Toxicroak, and the Pokemon she will Dynamax is always Grimmsnarl. And lastly for Galar, we have the rivals from the Isle of Armor DLC, Klara and Avery. But if I can be honest, I don't remember much about either of these two at all, so the information I give on them might not be quite as solid as it has been thus far. Klara is the rival for the DLC in Sword, and she is primarily a poison type trainer who's trying to make it as a pop star but without much success. She originally becomes a trainer to try and boost her popularity, but shortly gives up. She's on the Isle of Armor to train after hearing about the Master Dojo on TV. As a character, she basically falls into the cutesy on the surface but kind of insane trope, and despite her hate of losing, she doesn't want to train to get better either. At one point, she tries to cheat to beat us, but even with that edge, she still still loses. Very girl failure coded if you ask me. And I think her team kind of backs this up, because no version of it is that good. She's got a Skorupi, a Galarian Weezing, a Whirlipede, and a Galarian Slowbro. The level of her team varies depending on if the Darkest Day has happened or not, but as far as I can tell, the actual Pokemon she uses does not change. In our final fight against her, she actually sets up Toxic Spikes on the field before fighting us, which is how she cheats. In Pokemon Shield, Avery is the rival in the Isle of Armor DLC. He is primarily a Psychic-type trainer who comes from a family of psychics, where he's basically getting shamed because he doesn't have a cool enough psychic ability. Can you imagine having psychic abilities and still getting clowned on for them? Embarrassing. From a story perspective, he basically follows the same beats as Klara, including the whole cheating part. In his case, he sets up psychic terrain before battle, which is kind of wild because they just have Pokemon that do that. Like, just catch an Indeedee and then you don't have to cheat, dude. His team is a Galarian Ponyta, a Swoobat, a Kadabra, and a Galarian Slowbro. From here, we're moving on to the Paldean rivals, of which there are 3. Nemona, Arven, and Kieran. Technically, Kieran is from Kitakami, but we're talking about him here since he was introduced in Scarlet and Violet. First up is Nemona. Nemona is the most rival to ever rival, and by that, I mean she really enjoys battling. She basically spends the entire game hoping that we can grow so that she can finally have a trainer to match her strength. Unlike most rivals, Nemona is actually already a trainer when we first meet her, and it's kind of implied she might even be a champion already as well, which is kind of wild. She coaches us through the game, and while she is friendly and entertaining, she doesn't exactly have a ton of depth. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in this case. Static characters can work if they have enough supporting material to make them interesting, and I think that's the case with Nemona. Plus, there's just so much else going on in Scarlet and Violet story-wise that I think having a super complex rival might just push things over the edge. She's also apparently the class president of the Paldea Academy, which I didn't even know until researching this video. As for her team, she is a pretty well-balanced one made up of a Lycanroc, a Goodra, a Dunsparce, an Earthworm, a Pawmot, and her starter, which is the one that is weak to ours. Her team changes later in the DLC, where the Dunsparce is swapped out for Como-O and Earthworm is swapped out for Ribombee. The other rival in the Paldea region is Arven. Arven is one of those characters who kind of exists in the gray area of rivals. He's not a major rival like Nemona, but we do fight him a couple of times throughout the story. Battling us isn't Arven's main goal or motivation, however. No, that would be saving his poor old Mabostiff by feeding it a bunch of different strains of magical weed. Okay, that's a crass way to put it, but it's not inaccurate. We basically help him defeat 5 Titan Pokemon, and along the way, he tells us about his rocky relationship with his parents, who are also the professors in this game. They were pretty absent, so the Mabostiff was pretty much the only thing he could consider family. And honestly, I think this is one of the best backstories of any Pokemon rival. It gives him a reason to behave in the way that he does, and provides a strong motivation for his quest, which is surprisingly rare for rivals. We only have to fight Arven 2 times. The first time he just uses Mabostiff, and the second time he uses a team of Greedent, Cloyster, Scovillain, Toadscruel, Garganacl, and of course Mabostiff again. In case you're curious about Penny, she's actually not a rival, but the leader of an evil team, so we won't be talking about her here, but I already made a video on all the evil teams in Pokemon, so maybe check that out after this if you want to hear about her. The final rival of the Paldea games is the child who was gaslit into becoming a villain and then forced to apologize for it, Kieran. When first introduced, Kieran is a weak and insecure child. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but that's truly what he is. He likes us for our strength and independence, which are 2 qualities he lacks but deeply desires. This interest in us grows to adoration before finally evolving into resentment, as he eventually learns that the player and his sister are excluding him and hiding information on Ogerpon from him, which, to be fair, is exactly what we're doing, so his resentment makes sense, but it does go a bit too far, as he later tries to essentially force Ogerpon to join his party despite her wishes to join ours. We end up having to battle him for Ogerpon, and after this he has a full Joker moment by essentially taking over the Blueberry Academy, becoming the champion there and running it like a military dictator. dictatorship. So I do understand where his resentment is coming from, I just don't think he needed to go as far as he did. He then basically spends the entire Indigo Disc DLC taunting us, and then when we beat him again, he has another mental breakdown, which probably isn't helped by Drayton. He also tries to capture Terapagos but fails, and puts pretty much every major character's life in danger in the process. But he apologizes for it, so it's totally fine. I think Game Freak was really close to making Kieran an interesting rival. His story is so close to being compelling, but there's something about him that just makes it hard to take him seriously. Even after his makeover, I can't help but laugh when he tries to be intimidating, but I guess that could be fairly intentional since the anger he holds isn't his true self. I don't know, he's fine, but he could have been better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. As for the Pokemon he uses, I think Kieran might have the single best team of any rival in our final fight against him. He uses a team that would be considered almost competitively viable, using a rain team comprised of Dragonite, Politoed, Porygon Z, Grimmsnarl, Incineroar, and Hydrapple, which is a fairly decent Tera type in fighting. All of his Pokemon have held items, and all of them are using some moves that would be found on competitive teams. It's a very well composed team by the standards of Pokemon rivals. And our final main rival is Taunie or Urbaine. These two are kind of like May and Brendan, where we kind of get to choose the gender of our rival. Except unlike May and Brendan, Taunie and Urbaine are, well, let's call them troublemakers. They're friendly enough people, but like half the plot of the game only happens because our rival messes something up. Like when they get indebted to the Rust Syndicate and we basically have to clean up their mess. Or when they insist on going up Ange with Floette even though we beat them in battle and then the entire city is almost destroyed. A rival getting us in trouble isn't a bad thing in general, but I think what makes it really annoying in this case is just their attitude throughout the whole thing, because they're so nonchalant about it and never really get punished for their actions, even though they put so many people in danger over and over again. They also seem to think we all owe AZ, when in reality only they do. Don't get me wrong, AZ is nice and chill, so it's not like I'm gonna be mad about helping out him and his failing hotel, but our rival talks about how much we all owe him when we, the protagonist, have been in Lumiose for like 5 days total. It just feels like they're lumping us in with their problems, but I digress. I think this is also a problem just because we have a silent protagonist, and they are at least trying to make the rival interesting again, so I have to give some credit there too. As for the Pokemon they use, they have a Meowstic, a Goodra, an Avalugg, a Manectric, and both the starters that we don't, with the starter that our starter is weak to being the one that they Mega Evolve. In one of the later battles, they gain access to Eternal Floette, which they will Mega Evolve instead, and in this battle, Avalugg will be boxed. And lastly, for rivals, we have Lida and Naveen. While Lida and Naveen aren't technically considered rivals, if we're going to talk about people like Trevor and Avery, I feel like we should at least mention these two as well. They make up the rest of Team MZ and play a fairly small role in this story. We have occasional missions with them, and while they're not nearly as involved as Taunie, I do like them as characters. They at least have interesting personalities. Naveen might not be interesting in a great way though. He's basically a Twitch chatter. He's an avid watcher of Canary, and the immense information he has on her actually comes in handy a couple of times throughout the story. More importantly though, Naveen is interested in fashion. He's actually the one that made the jackets for Team MZ, but his grandmother forced him to throw away his sewing equipment because he needs to focus on his studies, which is pretty sad all things considered. As for his Pokemon, he's got an Ariados, a Sableye, a Crocodile, an Aegislash, and a Scrafty with its Mega Stone. It's a pretty well-balanced team all things considered. Then there's Lida, who's actually the half-sister of Tierno from the original Kalos games. She's a pretty chill person who doesn't add a ton to the story, but makes some pretty good comic relief. Her spunky attitude balances well with Taunie and Naveen, giving the whole group an entertaining vibe the few times we're all together. As for the Pokemon she uses, there's Clawitzer, Vanillux, Emolga, Vaporeon, and Mega Starmie. And that's all the rivals, at least from the mainline games. I know there are like 1,000 more from all the different side projects Pokemon has done over the years, but we're not covering them in this video because I just never cover side content like that. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. It really does mean a lot to me, and I think you should subscribe because you obviously love the content. Also, we have a Discord in the description down below, so maybe check that out too if you really like the content. Or if you don't and you want to tell me why, that that works too, I guess. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.